Okay, we're going to get started now. Again, thank you for joining today's live chat. This is a follow-up from our cleansing webinar that we did back in April. We surveyed all the webinar participants, and we found that many of you had unanswered questions, and we wanted to provide a forum to do so. So this is just going to be an open format. You guys can send questions directly through the screen, and we'll do our best to answer everything in the time that we have. So up at the top of the screen, you should see a question mark that says Ask a Question. If you have anything you want our speakers to answer, go ahead and ask it there, and we'll do our best to moderate everything and get everything answered. My name is Forrest Haig. I'm the brand manager here at Blessed Herbs. So right now you should see our logo on screen. I'm going to introduce you today to Amanda McQuade Crawford. Some of you guys know her from our previous sessions, but Amanda's been practicing herbal medicine for 25 years. And she is also a clinical psychologist focusing on mind and body healing for complex conditions in the 21st century. She's authored books on women's health and several physician textbook chapters on general wellness, such as diabetes and immunity. Amanda is adjunct professor at Massachusetts College of Pharmacy in Boston and regularly lectures at medical schools and conferences around the world. On screen right now, you should see our core topics for the day. We'll be discussing each of these in detail, and again, if you have any other questions, please submit them on the Ask a Question button at the top of your screen, and we'll do our best to answer them. With that, I'm going to introduce our first topic, cleansing with inflammatory bowel conditions. These conditions include leaky gut, IBS, chronic constipation, and others. So, Amanda, please tell us other conditions that fall under this category, and let's talk about some cleansing principles if you're affected by any of these.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Forrest, and thank you, everybody, for joining us this morning. I think that gives us a fair amount of information to be getting on with, and perhaps we can invite questions throughout this question and answer seminar from people who are participating. So let's just start generally with talking about foods that are healthy and foods that are less than healthy. This seems to be coming up as a frequent question for people. So let's just talk about acid and alkaline foods to start with. When we are aiming to improve health, whether it's through our cleanses or whether it's through changing our dietary patterns, we're wanting to aim at a pH that is around 7, and that's right in the middle between the scale that runs from 0 to 14. Really, all of our different body compartments like to have their own unique pH. It's slightly different in the stomach acid than it is in the bloodstream, for instance. But when we're choosing foods, we want to move toward foods that are more alkaline forming. A traditional standard American diet is more acid forming. So what we see here are things like white sugar and beef and cheese and ice cream and sodas and soft drinks and things of that kind. Also in that same end of the range, we're looking at foods that are not quite so acid forming, but still not brilliant for us, such as corn, white rice, gluten-containing foods, various kinds of proteins like turkey and chicken and lamb, and even things like coffee, which is an herb and has its value, but excess coffee in the diet tends to be acid-forming. Also, we have some problems with our reliance, especially in our country, on sweet flavors. So processed honey, if it's been pasteurized and it's been heated or cooked, that really isn't a whole lot better than white sugar or brown sugar. So those are kinds of foods that we want to avoid. Also, corn oil, eggs, butter, even things that have their value, such as yogurt and cottage cheese. What is most neutral is water. And when we're moving into looking at water, we want to make sure that we're looking at good quality tap water, most spring water, and I try to stay away from plastic bottled water, whatever brand it is, just because of the issue around the larger environment besides the environment inside of us. Alkaline foods that we want to encourage our families and ourselves to eat would be things like apples and almonds, and if you don't have a problem with citrus, which we're going to be talking about more in detail, we can have they are who are trying to lose weight, Bananas are a great source of protein, or rather potassium, and they can actually really make a big difference in terms of helping people with their heart health. Potassium is something that we generally want more of.
Hey, Amanda, can you talk? Amanda,
yes,
can you talk? Can you talk what are some of the other inflammatory bowel conditions? I know that a lot of people have questions on, like, should they be cleansing when they have something? Do you need to talk to a doctor first? So, people seem to wonder when is the best possible time to do it if they have something that's wrong with them, and then what could other conditions be?
Oh, that is such a big question. I was hoping to lead into it gently, but I will dive in to the deep end. Inflammatory bowel disease, there are so many of them, and whether we're talking about irritable bowel, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, diverticulitis, the best time to cleanse is when we're in a stable, generally stable state of health, as opposed to a flare-up or a crisis. With any diagnosed condition, it is always prudent to go to your regular care provider and get a second pair of eyes to look at your health and see whether this would be a good time for you once you've gotten through a crisis and things have calmed down in order to do a cleanse. I'm not sure if I'm entirely answering your question, Forrest. Does that meet the need?
Yeah, I think so. It seems we definitely have a lot of people that just have a question on, is it safe to do it if I have any type of condition, and that's kind of where the main question lies.
Well, any type of condition and is it safe is just too big of a question for me to answer ethically, but I would say let's make sure that we're not in a flare-up. Let's make sure that we get our regular care provider to agree that we have come through a crisis or a flare-up so that we're in a more stable condition. And then, yes, not one of these conditions that we've named would be inappropriate for cleansing. These would all be good candidates for people taking a chance to change their digestive tract health for permanent improvement, not just temporary improvement of the symptoms.
Okay, I think that definitely helps. Again, if anybody else has any further questions on the topic, you can submit them through the Ask the Question at the top of the screen. Amanda, next, let's talk about Candida.
All right.
Candida definitely comes up a lot. We also had somebody who actually just asked about it, and how our products, particularly our colon cleanse product, does it fix it? Can you tell a little bit about it?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, Candida is a whole group of yeast-like fungi. It's a whole family. So when we say Candida albicans, it's really not the only one. And we normally do have it on moist parts of our bodies, for instance, the linings of our mouths, also in women in vaginal mucosa. It's a normal organism in our environment. However, when it overgrows, that usually is a symptom that there's an imbalance of the other more appropriate kinds of ways that our immune system regulates and keeps that yeast down to the levels that make it no problem at all. So it's become a problem in the last several generations because we've gotten a lot of not only refined and processed foods, increased stress, which disrupts the healthy flora in the GI tract, and that has an impact on the yeast that grows or doesn't overgrow on other sites of the body. And we also have antibiotics and overuse of antibiotics, which has broken down normal immune self-control. So with yeast infections, and a lot of people think they have yeast when they might in fact have something else, so it's always wise to make sure that you get a good test from either family nurse practitioner or your doctor. Then when we know that it's yeast that we're going after, the best way to change it is with a simple fast or with juices that help to clear it out. And then there are a lot of foods that routinely help our bodies to deal with yeast. The most important two items are drop all refined sugars, and I mean all sugars, honey, maple syrup, all of it, and increase the alliums, onions, leeks, shallots, garlic. And even if people say that they have problems with those, the problem they're usually having is that the yeast hates garlic, and garlic goes after yeast. And all of those onion-type products can stir things up, and as the yeast is dying off, it can be a little uncomfortable, and there can be some gas. So we usually combine these things so that they're not so uncomfortable for somebody who's going through the process of clearing their body of excess yeast. One of my favorite ways to do that is to make a soup that helps to kill off the yeast and clear it from the body. So we might start with a couple of onions, and I include the skins, the whole darn thing. You can chop it up, but put the skin in there too, because the skin is what contains most of the anti-Candida properties. Then about, 2 onions, maybe 4 to 6 cloves of garlic, 4 cups of water, and put that in a saucepan, bring it to a boil, reduce the heat, and simmer it for about 5 minutes or so until any other vegetables that you might want to throw in are tender, like carrot, something like that. And then I usually use 2 individual people's taste, a pinch of sage, and I do mean just a literal pinch, a pinch of thyme, a little pinch of real salt, which is sea salt, some ground black pepper, and even a tiny half of a pinch of ground cloves, because cloves don't change the taste of the soup much, but it increases the anti-yeast activity of that soup. And then by the time you're serving it, you just take out the papery onion skins. You don't serve those. And then you can just drink a cup of that, hot or cold, as needed, 1, 2, 3 times a day. And that's a great addition to our cleanses that help to clear parasites from the body.
Amanda, have you heard of the spit test with Candida?
Say that again. The what test?
The spit test.
I haven't actually. It sounds like somebody in the audience knows more about this than me, and I'm happy to be educated. Explain the spit test to me.
I actually don't know.
Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't you let them actually put something on the screen to you as an answer, and we'll get back to that. I wanted to talk in the meantime about a couple more ways that we help to clear yeast besides that garlic and onion soup with a pinch of those different herbs, sage, thyme, cloves, real salt, black pepper. I'd like to talk a little bit about neem. N-E-E-M is a plant from India, and that has been shown to be also incredibly effective both externally as a mouthwash. You can now find all kinds of neem products, and it doesn't taste delicious. I wouldn't add it to food, but it really works very well, especially in conjunction with changing the way that we routinely eat and helping our body to build up the kinds of healthy gut flora that we know will keep us from getting an overgrowth of yeast or fungus again. And the fruits that are most useful in that regard, usually people think about antioxidant fruits, but blueberries and blueberry skins have been shown in research to be the most effective for all of these different inflammatory bowel conditions that we've been talking about in terms of improving the healthy gut flora and making sure that we're making the right kinds of bugs that will keep other yeasts and fungi down to a level that doesn't create symptoms. And we're not after killing off every last little yeast cell. That's a little bit of a military view, a biomedical view that we don't really need to buy into. What we're interested in is, because it's all around us and we're going to be re-exposed to it constantly, is we're increasing our own resilience and health so that a little bit of yeast here and there just creates no problem at all, and we just go on about our lives and pay attention to more important things than whether or not we still have a speck of yeast or candida in us. Have you had a chance for us to get an answer about the spit test? Because that's certainly new to me.
I did. She says you spit in filtered water first thing in the morning, and if your spit floats, you're balanced. If it sinks or separates, it means you have a candida overgrowth. Does that sound...
That sounds like something that I would need to look into, but honestly there are lots of reasons why people's spit might sink or float, and I don't know that I would count that without further research. I would really want to see the science around that, because I can think of different reasons for people's spit to sink or to float. So the jury is still out as far as I'm aware on that one. But I will look into it.
That definitely answered the question. The question is really, is it valid? And I think you definitely answered that in that there are a lot of reasons why that could happen, and so it may not necessarily be a problem with yeast.
Correct. I'm saying that as politely as I can. That's correct.
Okay. Now, one of the other, you had just mentioned a little bit ago about healthy gut flora, and
yes.
Another question that generally comes up a lot is people sometimes are skeptical about cleansing because they wonder, does the cleansing strip your body of the good stuff, if you will, the healthy gut flora? And if it does, is there a way to put that back in, or does it not?
That is, in fact, a great question. And the truth is that we all want to know more about that. But the consensus at the moment is, the way our understanding is just now, you cannot strip out all the good bacteria simply by stopping to eat foods, good foods, bad foods, and different foods. If you just stopped, you would still have so much bacterial colonization in the mucosal linings that you wouldn't be able to shed all of that even if you fasted for a very prolonged time, which is not what we're suggesting. But we do want to minimize the inappropriate flora, and that's what we get rid of when we do a cleanse. So almost everybody has heard of Metamucil. It's one of those commercial psyllium seed products that, in my opinion, has a problem because it's got added sugars and artificial ingredients, but everybody's pretty familiar with it. Those kind of psyllium seed products increase the bulk in our stool so that it carries out a lot of the bacteria with our stool when we eliminate in the mornings. So, excuse me, so the idea is that we want to clear the way so that the healthy flora have a chance to increase their numbers, which they will naturally do. Now, many people think that eating yogurt is a great way to recolonize the GI tract with healthy flora. And that is sometimes true, but not always, because the flora that is in yogurt will be deactivated by the strong stomach acid that a healthy person has. So if you've just had antibiotics for whatever reason, that would be a time when your stomach acid is relatively low, and eating yogurt would be helpful in recolonizing with healthy flora. But if you're in reasonable health and haven't just recently taken a course in antibiotics, then one of the best ways that we know of to increase healthy flora is to put it in forms that reach past the stomach acid into the intestinal tract. And that usually means taking some kind of product that has healthy levels of the bifidobacterium or the lactobacillus, and there are several different forms of the healthy bacteria that we want to have in there. Generally, onions, blueberries are the food ways to do that. Supplement-wise, there are many on the market, and without giving one or another precedence in this talk, I would say that we're looking for generally 200 billion or so of the bifidobacterium. That has been shown in studies to be helpful with gastritis, with enteritis, with Crohn's disease, with ulcerative colitis, and those last two are autoimmune diseases. So it's really impressive when an autoimmune condition responds to healthy flora being introduced. Also inflammatory bowel disorders generally, and even IBS, irregular irritable bowel syndrome, that has as much to do with stress and the stress hormones' effects on immunity as it does to do with the foods that we're eating or not eating.
That's great. You know, you mentioned talking about yogurt, and some people use yogurt as a substitute. Now, acidophilus, I believe, is what's usually in the yogurt, and it's important to find one that has that, no?
That is correct.
Okay.
And so there's acidophilus, there's bifidobacterium, there's lactobacillus, and there are several of those. And some of the better products on the market these days combine different healthy floras both the acidophilus and the others that I mentioned.
Okay, that's great. Another question that we got is cleansing around weight loss. It is not a weight loss solution, but can you talk a little bit about that?
Actually, it is important to be sensitive to the fact that when we're looking at weight loss issues, cleansing is a weight loss solution, but it's not a single-pronged solution. And by that I mean it's hard to lose weight when you have the wrong flora creating the cravings for the inappropriate foods that keep the weight on, especially if we're really virtuous with our food choices during most of the 24-hour cycle, but then late at night are overcome with some craving that we sneak into the kitchen and get away with, and then wonder why the weight isn't coming off. Weight loss really starts in the mind, and it starts with our self-image and with having an idea about how we want to change and why it's worth it. Because losing weight, whether it's the last 5 pounds or whether it's losing 110 pounds, which one of my patients that I just saw this week, she's lost 110 pounds. But she didn't do it overnight, and it took a great deal of looking within and answering sometimes challenging questions about how food comforts and why it's food that comforts as opposed to another human being or, some other relationship out in the real world. So, yes, our cleanses can help to kickstart weight loss because they clear out the inappropriate bugs that keep us craving the foods that are most harmful for our weight loss goals. But then, more importantly than just kickstarting that process, they can also alleviate the kinds of depression and anxiety and other psychological moods that keep us from being consistent with exercise and healthy choices and self-care, all of that goes along with long-term maintenance of getting to our weight goals. Did that make sense?
I think so. It definitely answers it for me. Now, another question. I'm gonna switch topics here a little bit. With our cleanses, with our colon cleanse kit, for example, we have a good option, a better option, and a best option. And some of that involves we recommend that you drink it with apple juice. Are there other juices that you can drink it with, and are there juices that you should avoid?
Great question. I like apple juice, but there are a lot of people who are sensitive to apple juice's constituents. So 2 other alternatives that I like. One is pear. Pear juice is, in addition to being cleansing, it's antiviral, and it's one of those fruits that tends not to create allergic responses in people. A second alternative, in addition to pear, would be tart cherry. And tart black cherry juice, although it can show up on acid-forming fruit lists, is also anti-inflammatory. So it's got some great qualities for helping with insomnia and with joint pain and the kind of muscle aches that can sometimes go along with cleansing or with these other conditions. The people usually don't just have a gastrointestinal complaint. There are usually other body systems that are affected too, like joint pain and hands and feet being stiff in the mornings, those kind of things. And for that, black cherry juice is really great. The juices I tend to avoid with our cleanses would be the citrus juices. And while I'm a big fan of people using grapefruit juice or orange juice in moderation, in season, if it's appropriate for their health, because not everybody can take citrus juice easily. The thing about those citrus juices is that they can cause some GI upset, and they can also bind with some of the herbs in our cleanses in a way that we would rather not. So when in doubt, leave citrus out and go for pear, if not apple, if not black cherry.
That definitely answers the question. Thank you. I know a lot of people have that question. Another one just came in. When would you not recommend cleansing, and what can be some drawbacks?
I would not recommend cleansing, and I've said this a little bit, but I'll say this in a different way perhaps. If we have somebody in a flare-up of diverticulitis or of ulcerative colitis or Crohn's, that's not the best time to go on a cleanse, because a cleanse really stirs up. If you can imagine a river and the silt that's at the bottom of the riverbed, we're stirring up that silt at the bottom of the riverbed during a cleanse. So if things are already churned up, I do not want to increase that activity because it would be hard on the person. It would be uncomfortable and it wouldn't be helpful in the end. So we wait for things to calm down, for a flare-up to pass, to reestablish some kind of stability, and that's when it would be great for us to introduce a gentle cleanse rather than one of our more extensive and deep-reaching cleanses, because the worse the condition is, the more gently we want to begin. And our best option is really for somebody who's done fasting and cleansing before, who's ready for it, whose body isn't topped up with all kinds of toxins. They're actually pretty clean, and they're just working on maintenance and keeping things flowing in a good way once or twice a year or so. That would be what I would recommend our best option. Did that answer that question for us?
Yeah, I think so. And I actually was going to ask you another question that you answered in your answer. My question was going to be, what's a good guideline? How often should you cleanse per year?
Well, that again depends on the person. You know, if somebody's eating a pretty clean diet and they're exercising so that they're burning the fuels that they put in, then really once a year could be quite sufficient, because they're cleansing every day just by getting good hydration, drinking lots of great quality water, sweating with exercise, showering, self-care, all of that, eating salads, eating something green and raw and fresh every day, even if they're not on a raw food diet. We all need to eat food that isn't cooked at least once every day. Then if somebody's in really poor shape, I might have them do a gentle cleanse once a week for 5 weeks, and then we'll reassess, and we might do a slightly more deep-reaching cleanse once a month for the next 3 months. So it depends on the person's ability to go through that process and how much they actually need it. And if people aren't certain how much they might need it, that's when it's useful to just see a naturopathic physician or somebody who's skilled in helping people to assess how much is enough and when have you reached the point where it's doing you the most good and you don't need to go overboard and do cleansing when your body doesn't need it, but neither do you want to be under cleansing when you have a chronic health condition that has lingered on perhaps for years. And that's when more frequent cleanses, but starting gently, makes the biggest difference in people's lives. So it might seem like a very arduous whole year process, but after that year, after many years on prescription medications, you can be a completely different person, cut down the medications that you require. Sometimes my patients have been able to completely clear out all their prescriptions, for instance, ulcerative colitis or Crohn's, autoimmune conditions that really are notorious in regular medicine for lingering on and for people needing more and more steroids as well as the other anti-inflammatories that are used.
And I think the big key there is to really listen to your body, correct, Amanda?
Yes, if you listen to your body, you'll know when you don't know the answer, and that's when somebody who's studied all of this is a useful ally, so that you can see a care provider to help you listen even better to the symptoms that your body is giving you. Because our bodies are talking to us all the time. We're just not accustomed in our mainstream culture to listening to them, and that's one of the things that people in this audience, for instance, we're all about changing that, right? We're interested in listening to our bodies so that we can have more fulfilling and liberated lives and not be always trooping down to the doctors.
So how do you listen to your body? How do you know when your body is telling you that I need a cleanse?
the most common symptoms are indigestion, bloating and gas, headaches, and not just a headache that would be explained by something else. You know, if you've had a deadline and you haven't slept and you haven't eaten and your blood sugar is low and you're running on coffee and you've been staring at a computer screen for a couple of days at a time, that kind of headache isn't about a cleanse. Maybe a break from the computer, maybe a massage instead of stress, but that's not really what our herbal cleanses are about. You would notice that you might need a cleanse if you had a headache that you didn't have another explanation for. Also, if you notice that your sweat is smelling a little sour, or if you or somebody around you notices that your breath is changing, sore throat. Sore throat doesn't necessarily mean you have a throat infection. It could just be that you're starting to get the symptoms of needing to cleanse. So our lungs are an organ of excretion, and what we breathe out is just as much of a waste product as our sweat and the other waste products that we eliminate through stool and through urine. So how we smell to ourselves and to others, how we feel within ourselves, and digestive symptoms that are a change. If we normally are able to eat whatever we like, but suddenly something disagrees with us, that usually is a symptom for us to pay attention to. Maybe it's just a food that disagrees with us. It could be that simple. Or it could be that your digestion isn't breaking down that food as fully as it used to. And that would, again, be a chance for us to look inside and say, how are my gut flora? We don't normally stop and ask that question, but it's worthwhile asking. What are my little bugs inside? You know, because we have more microbes in our bodies than we think we do, even when we're at our most healthy. In fact, we shouldn't even say, I'm going to the store. We should say, we are now going to the store, because we're carrying a whole universe of healthy, happy microbes along with the not-so-great ones. So looking within and asking about the state of that microbial population is one of the ways that we can tune in and ask. Some people get it when they just sit down and meditate. Some people just will notice that they're dreaming about rushing rivers and clean mountain streams. That, to me, would be a dream message from one's interior to perhaps stop and take stock and ask if it's time for a cleanse.
That's great. Thank you. We got some more questions coming in, so I'm going to switch gears here. We were just talking about apple juice is what we recommend in the cleanse, and talking about other juices that are beneficial as well. We have somebody that drinks apple juice because they also pass gallstones, and they understand that it softens the stones for passing. Would a pear juice have that same function?
Actually, cherry juice is more specific to gallstones than apple juice. Apple juice is useful for stones. Gallbladder stones are of 3 different types normally. The most common type responds to peppermint tea, to something called stone root, an herb not usually in our cleanses, but works really well for gallstones. But then cherry juice and grapes are a great way to help to change the uric acid in our joints, but also to change the gallstones that are in our gallbladder so that they can be softened and help to remove them. So peppermint tea is another option in addition to the apple juice or the cherry juice.
Great answer. Thank you. Another person has been diagnosed with fatty liver. How might somebody get fatty liver if they're a non-drinker, non-smoker?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm sorry to hear about that, but the good news is that there's a lot that you can do. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is what that's called, NAFLD. Doesn't that sound delightful? The way that you can get that is partly through family history, partly through the way your body metabolizes cholesterol and fats that you might be eating in your diet. So a simple solution is to start changing the nature of the fats that you eat, so cutting down on fats generally, but eating fats that are from sunflower seeds or whole raw almonds and chewing them really well, or using tahini, which is sesame seed paste, instead of, say, peanut butter, because peanuts are on the more acidifying end of the scale of foods that we were talking about at the beginning of the question and answer seminar. And almonds and sesame seeds are actually a little more cleansing and the kind of healthy fats. In addition to changing the kinds of fats that you're putting into the body, they've done studies again on changing the gut flora, and those have been really helpful with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So refer back to the probiotics that we talked about earlier. It's great in terms of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and there are many other reasons besides family history and fat metabolism why somebody might develop that. But out of all the different causes, what you're most interested in is no longer having that disease label hung around your neck. So to get rid of that, change your flora. Look at the kind of toxins that you're building up and that are creating more digestive imbalance with your flora. Not that I mean to just sound like one solution fits all problems, but for non-alcoholic fatty liver, again, we're looking at studies that show that those combinations of, anywhere between 200 billion up to 500 billion 3 times a day for a year has been shown to be really effective for that kind of condition.
Okay, what about colitis? Is that classified as an inflammatory bowel condition as well?
It does indeed, because itis means inflammation. So that's inflammation somewhere along the lining of the colon. So colitis is indeed an inflammatory bowel disease. And in addition to some of the comments that we've already talked about, I would say that inflammatory bowel disease, such as colitis, depends on where it is and what the cause is. It's usually not just an infection. I know that people have heard for years now that an ulcer is caused by a certain microbe, and that antibiotics will knock out that bug and clear up the ulcer. I don't think it's that simple with colitis. I don't even think it's that simple with ulcers. I think that with colitis, we want to be looking at many different causes, many possible causes, and removing foods, especially textures that irritate the colon lining, and then having a look at the effects of stress and depression on inflammatory conditions like colitis, because we have more nerves in our digestive tract than we do in our brains. That's amazing, but it's true. And we have shown through research now, not me, others who are smarter than me have shown in their research that when we're upset, it disrupts the function of the colon lining. And when we have a disruption of the colon lining, it can make us upset. So it's a two-way street. And that's why colitis, just changing the flora alone, really doesn't have lasting benefits. Changing the flora and working on ourselves, finding ways to do deep breathing exercises or to simply physically exercise and get some tension out of the body, or to do some kind of meditation therapy or aromatherapy and massage. Anything that gets us out of our heads can really help our bodies. Not that we want to escape, but rather that colitis is something that we treat both mind and body, knowing that there's a connection between really healing up that lining, not just taking anti-inflammatory herbs. We could take anti-inflammatory herbs forever, but I don't know if that's really getting to the bottom of the problem. Anti-inflammatory herbs that have been useful for colitis include low doses of licorice root, wild yam. I know people think of wild yam and reproductive hormones, but it really works to reduce spasm and pain in an inflamed, painful colon. So wild yam, licorice root, and some of the other herbs that are in our cleanses have a calming effect. Fennel seed, for instance, and chamomile. These are herbs that are anti-inflammatory and are healing to the lining of the colon at the same time that they're relaxing the whole person.
Okay. Again, switching gears here. In the last call, we mentioned that 40% of the toxins are gotten from electricity. How can we help reduce that exposure? And what can help with that?
That is a great question, and I wish that I had a great answer, but I only have an okay answer. If anybody else wants to type into UForest other suggestions that I might be missing here, I would welcome those. So electromagnetic frequencies we're exposed to because everybody these days has a cell phone, and the internet is just vibing all around us everywhere we go. Even if we don't have a cell phone in our pockets, or if we use it using the speaker function instead of having it up to our ear, you're still finding that our exposure is higher than we are really taking into account. So turn off your phone, get away from your TV, your YouTube, your computer screen for at least an hour a day. Go walk outside. And even if you live in a city and outside means that it's somebody else's set of electromagnetic frequencies that you might be walking through, just exposing ourselves to daylight and evening light and moonlight and cloud cover, all of that, returning to nature for an hour a day is a great way to help us to cope with the fact that we have increased exposure to electromagnetic frequencies. Forrest, I'm hoping somebody else has typed in more brilliant answers than what I just gave. Has there been another suggestion?
There have been other suggestions, but even us here in this room definitely agree with you. I think you gave a good answer.
Okay. All right, great.
Next question is actually on gallstones and gallbladder cleansing. What should one do if they have gallstones? How do they know if they have gallstones?
Oh, you would know if you have gallstones. Gallstones are formed from cholesterol and certain pigments in our body, and they make little lumps, really hard little lumps, and we usually feel it on the right side of the body, but deep in. And it's so deep in that some people don't feel gallstone pain where it is. It's referred through nerves that run up to the shoulders. So it can be sudden intense pain. You can have a fever, even though you don't have an infection. You just have gallstones, and you can feel like you're about to get sick and can, in fact, even throw up. So usually those gallbladder attacks last for 30 minutes. The worst ones can last up to about 4 hours. And you can be sore for another day or two after that because it's really an attack, a gallbladder attack. The little lumps of cholesterol and bile pigments can't go through the narrow tubes that leave from the gallbladder. And so our aim is to get those little lumps to shrink, to soften, and to turn into crumbly bits that can go through the narrow tubes, and that way we can get them out of the body. One of our best herbs for that is, I mentioned it already, is peppermint. But I actually had a gallstone patient who couldn't stand the smell or the flavor of peppermint. It just made her sick to her stomach, which is the opposite of what we want. So with her, I used ginger and an herb called celandine, chelidonium. I'll spell that because it's a weird name, right? The English name is C-E-L-A-N, D as in dog, I, N as in Nancy, E, celandine, or celandine. And that has traditionally been used for treating the liver. And it works really well in combination with a much more common herb, and that would be dandelion root. Dandelion root and dandelion leaf in combination with celandine is a great way in tea form or in herb capsules to start to change the gallstones so that they're easier to pass. But if you don't know if you've got gallstones or not, maybe you've had a family history, maybe you've had an attack years ago, but you're not sure if you have them anymore, it's pretty easy to get a test with a regular doctor who can have a look inside, and they don't have to use the harsh drugs that are commonly used in conventional medicine, but they can at least give you a really clear diagnosis if you're not sure if you have gallstones. And ginger works as well. There are lots of other herbs that people have used. Ginger and turmeric are what they would use in other parts of the world where those are native. But in my part of the world, I would use dandelion, root and leaf, celandine, maybe a little peppermint, because they're abundant and they're not endangered. They're not expensive, and you need to drink it for a while. And they're also really, really safe to use.
Okay. I do have some more questions, Amanda. Quick time check. It is 1:46, so we do only have 15 minutes left. If there are any other questions, I urge you guys to get them in now in order to get your answer prior to this session ending. But in the interest of time, I'm going to keep going. Amanda, I can't even summarize this, so I'm going to read it. My 6-year-old had many problems with digesting dairy products since he was born. He can tolerate 2 glasses of milk a day. My local natural food store recommended a probiotic and enzymes, but when I introduced it into his milk, he complained that his stomach hurt. Recently, his legs hurt. He's been complaining that his legs hurt, and I'm concerned he is not getting the calcium that he needs. What do you recommend?
That is a good and complex question. So if that parent would make sure to just let us know through your chat with Forrest if I'm getting the answer that's going to be most helpful, that would be great for me too. Keep me on track and make sure that we get to other questions. I'm not entirely sure why you need to give your 6-year-old 2 glasses of milk a day. If he's lactose intolerant or has a problem with dairy, there are other ways to get great calcium for his growing bones and teeth and hair and every other function that calcium has in the body. Greens have more bioavailable calcium than dairy products. So if your son has a problem with dairy, I wouldn't even bother going with goat at this time. Let his growing body do without those irritants to his system and instead focus on the kinds of seeds and greens that are rich in bioavailable calcium. So, for instance, lettuce, especially if it's not just iceberg, but real lettuce, can taste delicious. Baby greens, some spinach, a mix of some fennel chopped into a green salad, along with things that are colorful and look good, that are appealing and appetizing in a salad bowl. That would be a great way of making sure that your son is learning to eat in a calm and relaxed way, not rushing through or on the way to Little League practice after school, but really eating slowly and chewing thoroughly. That's the missing piece in most people's experience of trying to get adequate mineralization from a vegan or vegetarian or plant-based diet. It's the chewing it, it's the swallowing it, making sure that our digestive juices are really extracting all the mineral goodness from those greens that we possibly can. In addition, I mentioned earlier for somebody else to avoid peanuts and peanut butter and switch over to sesame seed. That could be an alternative for your son as well. Sesame seeds and sesame seed paste, which is called tahini, can be mixed into other foods. It's a little bit granular for many 6-year-olds to really love it. I love it, but I'm not a 6-year-old boy, right? So to make it really palatable for your kids, you can mix it half and half with honey, or half and half, and that would be raw local honey for you, or half and half with a little peanut butter, a little almond butter, a little cashew butter, something else that tastes sweet and good, and use that instead of peanut butter as a spread for sandwiches. And again, choosing the kind of breads that had some flax seeds, that had some sunflower seeds baked into them, because the more seeds and the more greens that you can introduce, the more certain you're going to be about the calcium. Now, we want to be careful, so it would be useful to go to a care provider, either your regular doctor or a naturopath or somebody who can draw a little blood sample and check to make sure that all of the minerals and vitamins are in good balance, that there is adequate calcium in the blood, so that you're making sure that the legs that are hurting, your boy who's complaining of his legs hurting, that's something that might be growing pains. That might not be lack of calcium, but we need to make sure. And whether it's growing pains or another cause, giving your son a chance to get the blood massaged from his toes right up through the heels, up through the calves, and back past the knee, that's a great way to help with painful growing spurts, to make sure that the pain is going to be less. And there's also something really bonding and wonderful about getting your feet and your legs massaged by your mom or your dad on a regular basis, because really it's touch that ultimately heals, whether it's the touch of the plants we eat or the touch of the people who love us. Your boy's legs may not be hurting constantly, but when they do, it could be a great opportunity for there to be some checking in to see what's the cause and what's the best solution. And whatever the cause, who doesn't want a foot massage?
Okay, next question, Amanda, has to do with allergies.
Yes, allergies.
Is there possible causes for various allergies, and how does cleansing help or not help with that?
That's a good question. Are we talking about food allergies or airborne allergies like hay fever and spring itchy eyes?
We are talking specifically about more hay fever, itchy eyes, and airborne, but I do think it would be beneficial to talk to both sides, but the specific question has to do with airborne.
Okay. Hay fever is an immune problem, not a problem with ears, eyes, nose, and throat. So the last thing we want to do is use nasal decongestants and antihistamines, even the herbal versions of those. The causes of hay fever are numerous. It often has to do with not having been breastfed when we were infants. But with that being said, there are other causes as well. And we usually treat hay fever starting around Christmas. So somewhere between Thanksgiving, Hanukkah, Christmas, the winter holidays. That's when we begin treating a spring hay fever, because it takes between 4 to 6 months to use the cleanses, and yes, they do help, to use the cleanses to change our immune response. If you imagine all these little pollens floating around in the air in the springtime, our immune system, when we have allergies, interprets those innocent little plant pollens as disease-causing proteins, and goes after it with inflammation and redness and itching and watery eyes and all the rest of it, coughing and spluttering and everything else that goes with hay fever. But those pollens really aren't attacking us. They're just out there to do their plant reproductive work and to help with bees and to help with nature generally. So if our mucus is too thick and sticky, we're holding too many of those little pollens in our systems, and our immune system decides that that's a problem. So the first thing we want to do is decrease congestion, drop dairy. And this is really hard to do around Hanukkah and Christmas, but we want to decrease dairy generally, because that's the kind of mucus-producing food that makes us more likely to have allergies come springtime, or whenever our season is, whether it's fall, spring, or whenever it comes. So clearing out the foods that are congesting, that would include oatmeal, although I love oatmeal for other people because of its fiber, its benefits on lowering cholesterol, cardiovascular health. If you've got hay fever, we'll find other ways to get healthy grains like brown rice, which is not so allergenic, and oats we'll leave aside for this year anyway. So clearing the congesting foods like oatmeal and dairy products, we would be increasing cooked vegetables and raw and cooked fruit. Applesauce is a great way to go. And then using the herbs that we know have a benefit on clearing not only the congestion in the upper respiratory system, but changing our immune system's response to the pollens when they start circulating in abundance during the spring months. And that really is more of a prescription, so I don't really want to give a prescription for hay fever over the phone. But yes, there are herbs that have been traditionally used. They include herbs like feverfew and garlic and echinacea, which is not just for colds. It's used short term in a matter of 3 to 6 months to help alter our immune response to allergens, airborne allergens. And then the continual cleansing from time to time, that would be a good indication for doing a cleanse at least twice a year, if not every 3 to 4 months, maybe doing it 3 times a year.
Amanda, is there a difference between pollen and dust allergies and how you treat them?
Yes, there is, because the dust allergies, you're probably looking at an allergic response to dust mites, and that is a little tiny, almost invisible animal in addition to the irritation of the dust. So dust allergies we would treat in a more or less similar way, but that's where it's important to have a HEPA filter in the house, to have really great hygiene, to make sure that old carpets are removed, that old mattresses are replaced. And that can be expensive, but it makes a really big difference. Otherwise, you're going to be continually fixing the same problem over and over if you're putting your face down on that mattress or that pillow that really needs to just be chucked out and replaced. So dust mite allergies are a different issue than hay fever.
Okay, thank you. Just in the interest of time, I'm gonna wrap this up here. I did want to let you guys all know that we now have a resources tab on blessedherbs.com, and there's an Ask the Herbalist section where Amanda and also our other herbalist James answer questions on a regular basis. There's a blog filled with tons of information, great articles. A lot of this stuff is actually addressed in some of the articles, so I would urge you guys to check it out. There's also a practitioner lookup in that section, so you can find a practitioner in your area as well. And with that, Amanda, thank you so much. Wonderful answers. And for everybody that's on the phone, great questions. Thank you guys all again. We will continue to do these on a regular basis, and if you guys have any other questions, again, I remind you to check out the Ask the Herbalist section on blessedherbs.com.
I'm also grateful to the people who raised questions that make me go back to the drawing board and research some of the things that I need to know more about. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, definitely. And if there were any questions that were unanswered during this session, I would ask you to submit them through the Ask the Herbalist, and then we can answer you directly. We'll be doing these again. Look for them roughly once a month, and we will communicate with you back via email. Check our Facebook page, our Twitter account. We're very active on there, so we will keep you up